My son-in-law threw wine in my face, calling me old. He didn't know I was a retired judge. Rain hammered the restaurant windows, blurring the city into silver streaks. Inside, the table gleamed with wine glasses and tension. My daughter Lily sat stiff, her hand resting on her husband's arm like a peace offering. Chase leaned back, eyes glinting with the smug confidence of youth gone unchecked. "You're clinging to the past, Sam," he said, swirling his drink. "Your house, your money, dead assets. Sign them over. Let someone who actually knows what he's doing handle things." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You mean you?" His grin widened. "Exactly. Or are you too senile to see an opportunity?" The laugh that followed wasn't humor. It was power testing its echo. Lily whispered, "Dad, please." But Chase didn't stop. He raised his glass, voice low and venomous. "Obey me, old man." Then the wine flew dark red across white linen, splashing my face like a verdict. I didn't flinch. I reached for my badge. I guess 99% of you will hear this. Sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second. What time is it for you, and where are you listening? Rain had already started by the time I got to 48th Street. Not the cinematic kind, just New York rain, impatient, pushing people under canopies that didn't want them. I shook off my umbrella before stepping into the lounge. Warm air, polished wood, jazz that sounded like it was trying too hard to relax people who didn't know how. We were supposed to call it neutral ground. Chase's phrase. He said the word neutral, the same way realtors say charming is code for not quite honest. Leather chairs cooled against my palm as I sat down. The place sold comfort like it was a commodity. $40 cocktails and an unspoken rule that no one over 50 should talk too loudly. There was a bowl of almonds on the table, each one shiny with oil, faintly smelling of someone's old perfume. Chase was already there, leaning back in his seat like the air owed him rent. His Negroni glowed under the amber light, the orange rind catching it just so. Lenore sat beside him, her jewelry whispering every time she moved. My daughter Lily sat across from me, looking smaller than I remembered, her posture rehearsed. Chase grinned. "Sam, good to see you out of chambers. How's retirement treating you?" He said retirement like it was a diagnosis. "Peaceful," I said. He swirled his drink, eyes on the glass. "No offense, but courts these days." He trailed off, as if the thought might offend him more than me. "They're kind of outdated, right? Deals solve faster than judges. We don't need gavels, we need leverage." Lenore laughed softly, hand on her son's sleeve. "Modern justice is efficient now," she said. "You know apps." Her smile was a blade wrapped in satin. I took a slow sip of water. "Efficiency," I said. "That's one word for it." Lily stared at her drink, tracing the condensation ring on her napkin. She didn't look up, didn't say a thing. I'd seen that silence before, in witnesses who'd already chosen a side before the hearing started. It was the kind of silence that hummed with guilt, the kind you could almost smell. Eleanor's voice came back to me then, soft and steady. "Notice the small thing, the loose thread, the chipped cup, that's where the truth leaks." My eyes drifted to the ceiling. There was a hairline crack running toward the exit sign, thin as a vein. Funny how you can spot decay in the most expensive places. I set down my glass, folded my hands. "Tell me something, Chase," I said. "What do you call justice that's fast but not fair?" He blinked, caught between a smirk and a frown. "Efficient?" "No," I said. "Convenient." That hung there for a moment, heavier than it had any right to be. Even the jazz seemed to falter, one note shy of confidence. Lenore cleared her throat, reached for her purse. Lily's eyes flicked up briefly, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the courage or maybe the permission. Chase broke the quiet with a grin that didn't touch his eyes. "Well," he said, "respect is for closers." He laughed, short and smug. The kind of laugh that tells you a man's never been told no by someone who meant it. I smiled. "Good line," I said. "I'll remember that." He thought I was humoring him. I was taking notes. When the check came, I paid with my old Mont Blanc, the nib scratching against the receipt like a deliberate cut. He didn't notice. They never do. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. I stepped to the curb, looked back once through the window. Chase was still talking, hands in motion, performing confidence for an audience that wasn't looking. I left my card on the table, and the room's music sounded thinner like someone had taken a string out of a violin. Friday night was Eleanor's favorite night. She used to say it had the quiet of a landing, a place between the week's noise and the weekend's pretending. I tried to honor that her china, her roast chicken recipe, the napkins she'd ironed so precisely they could have stood on their own. Even now, setting that table felt like summoning her steadiness. Lily moved around the dining room carefully, as if any wrong move might break the truce she'd been trying to build all week. "Please, Dad," she whispered, smoothing the tablecloth. "He's trying." "I'm sure he is," I said, checking the oven timer. The rosemary and garlic made the brownstone smell like peace, or at least like something pretending to be. The knock came 20 minutes late. Not the apologetic kind, confident, rhythmic. A man who expected someone to open. The door swung inward. Rolex first, then Chase, grinning like he'd just closed a deal. "Traffic on the FDR is a nightmare," he said, shrugging off his coat. "But hey, you'll love this, Sam. Off-market opportunity in Red Hook. Industrial bones, artist zoning, the whole 9 yards. He brushed a hand along my banister like he was appraising it, not admiring it. "You a homeowner of record, right? Great. We can unlock that idle equity, make it work for you." Lily tried to step in, voice light. "Dinner's ready." He waved her off gently, eyes still on me. "No, but seriously, this place has potential. I mean, good bones." He smiled wider. "Shame it's stuck in the past." It was an impressive trick, really complimenting while insulting. A salesman's sleight of hand. The scent of the roast chicken reached the hall, and I realized his cologne was trying to compete with it. He walked toward the dining room without waiting to be invited, tapping the oak railing twice as he passed. Counting the steps, probably. "Nice piece," he said, nodding toward the grandfather clock. "Antique?" "Gift," I said. "Must be worth something," he added, like the word gift hadn't registered. At the table, he filled his plate before Lily had even sat down. "So, Sam," he said between bites, "you've got all that land in the Catskills, right? What's the plan there? If it's just sitting—" Lily shot me a pleading glance. "Dad." I held up a hand. "It's resting," I said. He chuckled, missing the edge. "Idle equity," he repeated, savoring the phrase. "Money sleeping in the walls. I could wake it up for you." I smiled politely, lifted the wine bottle. "Merlot?" "Sure," he said, leaning back, satisfied. I poured him a glass and set the bottle down with care. The candle wicks hissed softly, a sound I'd always liked. The air smelled of rosemary and arrogance. While Chase talked about unlocking value, I slipped my iPhone onto the sideboard. Voice memos. New file. The red icon glowed small, steady, and quiet as a drop of blood. It wasn't rage. It was record-keeping. Old habit. In court, you don't shout when someone lies. You document. My father's Omega ticked faintly under my cuff. Time-keeping score, as always. Lily's shoulders sank as Chase launched into another story, something about a cash partner in Jersey City who'd flipped a judge's property for a respectful margin. I let him talk. I even nodded once or twice, like I was learning something. In truth, I was just waiting. When he complimented the staircase, I heard him count the steps. Dinner was supposed to end quietly. Roast chicken carved, green beans passed, polite conversation pretending to patch what wasn't whole. The air smelled of rosemary and butter. Eleanor's version of peace, though she wasn't here to make it anymore. Chase had refilled his own glass twice. His cheeks were pink with confidence and alcohol. He talked like a man holding court, except he'd never earned one. "So here's the thing," he said, leaning forward, elbows on the table, his Rolex glinting in the candlelight. "We need your deed in the trust I manage. It's strategic, Sam, clean, simple, keeps the family estate tax efficient." He said we like he was already king of something. Lily looked at me from across the table, eyes pleading. "Don't start. I wasn't starting anything. He was." Steam rose off the beans, curling like smoke. I placed my fork down gently. "No." Chase blinked. "No?" He tilted his head like he hadn't heard that word in years. "You heard me." He laughed sharp, humorless. "Sam, come on, don't be old-fashioned. I'm offering protection. You keep title. We manage growth. Win-win." I folded my napkin. "You're not protecting me. You're circling me." Something in his jaw twitched. He tapped the table twice with 2 fingers, deliberate. The sound was soft, but it carried like a gavel that sneered. Sign the papers, he said. No. It wasn't loud, just certain. And then, without warning, the glass in his hand tilted. A crimson curve flashed across the white tablecloth before I even felt it. The wine hit my face warm, wet, sharp, with tannin and metal. I blinked. The smell of dark fruit filled my nose, sweet and violent at once. For a second, no one moved. China clinked somewhere, slow and small, like the room didn't understand yet. Then Lily gasped, a small sound, her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "Obey me, old man," he said. Not shouted, commanded. The kind of tone you use on something, not someone. The room went still. No jazz now, no pretense of warmth. Just the faint hiss of the candles and, outside, a siren crying once and fading into the city. I stood. My chair didn't scrape. It rose like a verdict. My napkin stayed folded. I dabbed at my face once, twice. Red on white. Evidence. He waited for me to yell back. To break something, but I'd seen this before the performance of power. In courtrooms it came dressed in suits and motions. Here it wore cologne and ego. In my mind, I saw a bailiff's steady hand on a young attorney's shoulder years ago, after he'd cursed a ruling. Calm is a choice you can keep, the bailiff had told me later. I chose it now. I reached into my jacket. The small leather wallet came out smoother than memory. I hadn't touched it in 2 years. Lily whispered, "Dad." I placed it on the table, flipped it open. The badge caught the candlelight, a retired judge's seal, dulled from years but still carrying its weight. Chase's smirk faltered. "Do you know what leverage really is?" I asked. "It's not ownership. It's credibility." He stared, throat tight, like the room had shrunk around him. I didn't move, didn't blink. Just let the badge rest there, metal on linen, a coin sealing a letter. Somewhere in the distance, the radiator clicked, steady as a heartbeat. Chase's face lost its color as the badge found the candlelight. The smell of wine and rosemary lingered long after the shouting should have stopped. It coated the air, the table, my skin. The badge still caught a sliver of candlelight between us, gleaming like a mirror no one wanted to look into. Chase broke first. His voice came out thin, the bravado gone. I didn't mean he provoked." Lily cut him off. Not sharply, quietly, like a parent calming a child. "Stop." Then she looked at me. Not at the wine, not at the badge. Me. "Dad, please," she said, the words trembling on their own leash. "He's under stress. The project matters. Could you just not escalate this? For us? For us." She reached out, then stopped short, her hand hovering an inch from my wrist before falling back to her lap. "Put the badge away," she said, softer now. "Please, don't make it a thing." The silence after that was heavier than the shouting had been. The candle flickered. The wax pooled like a slow wound. Chase sat there, pretending not to exist, eyes darting between us, his pulse still visible in his neck. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of what I represented, the version of himself he'd just exposed. I tasted copper on my tongue and realized I'd bitten my lip, the iron tang mixed with the wine still clinging to my skin. It was the flavor of restraint. Eleanor's voice whispered in memory, steady as always. "Mercy, without boundary, is surrender." Lily's eyes glistened. She thought she was saving peace. What she was really doing was drawing a boundary and putting me outside it. I wiped the badge clean with my napkin, slow, deliberate. The motion filled the room like a gavel strike no one could unhear. Then I folded the napkin, set it beside my plate, and said the only word that didn't betray me. "Noted." Lily's breath hitched. I stood and began clearing plates, one by one. The scrape of china against china was the only sound. She tried to speak again, but the rhythm of the plates cut her off. Quiet can be a verdict, too. When I picked up my phone from the sideboard, the screen lit the edge of the table. The red waveform was still pulsing, small, steady, alive, evidence breathing in digital form. Chase noticed. His face drained again, and for the first time all night, he looked small. Lily whispered, "Dad, what are you doing?" "Cleaning up," I said. She didn't ask what I meant. Maybe she already knew. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sliding across the dining room wall, bright for half a second, then gone. The reflection made the silverware glint like a row of small knives. For a flicker of time, I saw another room, the auditorium at Lily's old dance recital. She was 8, hair pulled too tight, scanning the crowd until she found me. Her smile had lit the stage like it mattered that I was there. Now she couldn't meet my eyes. I stacked the plates, one atop another, the china trembling slightly under the weight. She reached for a napkin, maybe to help, maybe just to have something to hold, but I beat her to it. "This isn't about escalation," I said quietly. "It's about recognition." She didn't respond. When I turned to rinse the wine from my hands, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, half shadow, half candlelight. A man learning that silence can bruise deeper than words. When a house chooses quiet over truth, the walls learn to lie. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I logged in. When anger runs cold, it turns into something useful procedure. I'd spent a lifetime mastering that kind of temperature, the kind that leaves no fingerprints, just signatures. The next morning I ironed a shirt without thinking about it, poured black coffee, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The table still smelled faintly of wine and rosemary. I didn't wipe it away. Évidence déserves oxygène. The first call went to my attorney in Midtown. She picked up on the second ring. "Judge Whitaker," she said automatically. "Retired," I reminded her. She smiled through the line. "Respect doesn't retire." Oh. When I arrived, the city was still waking up, sirens threading through the glass, the smell of rain on metal. She slid a yellow legal pad across the desk, the kind that always smelled faintly of pulp and ink. "2 letters," she said. "One notice of the no contest clause, now with donor, intent addendum, will specify educational purposes for the estate funds, no ambiguity." She turned the page. "Second, cease and desist for any misrepresentation of your consent regarding property. Just in case your son-in-law wants to get creative." We both knew he would. I signed both with my Mont Blanc, the same pen I'd used to swear in clerks for 15 years. The nib scratched slightly old, but steady. Next stop, Bank of America. The manager knew me by name. "Morning, Judge," she said, waving me into her glass office. "Retired," I said again. She smiled. "Respect doesn't retire." We adjusted account alerts. Any attempted lien or ownership change on my property would trigger an immediate call. "I want to know before any paper moves," I said. "You will," she promised. "You've built a fortress. We'll keep it clean." On my way out, I bought a cheap umbrella from a newsstand. The rain had turned from polite drizzle to steady judgment. My third call was to a former clerk, now ethics counsel for the state bar. "Just touching base," I said. "Want to make sure my next steps sit on clean ground." He chuckled. "If anyone knows the line, it's you. Don't cross it. Just mark it clearly." Already did. On the subway ride home, a busker played something slow on an old violin. The melody was cracked, but honest. I watched his fingers and thought of Eleanor shelling peas at our first house in Albany, one rhythm leading to another. Tradition isn't weakness, it's patience, wearing good shoes. By the time I reached the brownstone, the clouds had moved east. I opened my front door to a faint draft of rosemary and memory. I set my phone on the counter and opened my files. Deeds, trusts, amendments. I scanned them all clean, labeled, time-stamped, and uploaded copies to a secure cloud. One folder, one password. No noise. Then I took a single envelope from the desk drawer and wrote in my own hand, "Open only if I forget who I am." Inside, I placed a list of everything Eleanor and I had built: assets, endowments, promises kept, a map of our life in ink. Before sealing it, I added one more line. This was never about winning. It was about remembering the rules. When I looked around the house, I noticed how still it was. No footsteps, no raised voices, just the tick of my father's Omega on the mantel. By dusk, my house felt like a courthouse. After the gallery empties, the kind of quiet that means a verdict is on its way. The Davenports chose the place, of course Park Avenue. Corner table, white lilies in slim vases, the kind of light that flatters everyone except the truth. The chalkboard by the door pushed avocado toast $24 like it was a challenge, and the waitstaff smiled the way only people paid to witness power do. Chase was already seated when I arrived. Macchiato in hand, Rolex catching the light like punctuation. Lenore waved me over with 2 fingers, her Dior handbag resting on the table as if it needed its own seat. Lily looked composed, her lipstick the exact color of caution. "Sam, darling," Lenore started, that honeyed voice sharp underneath. "So good of you to come. We've all cooled down, haven't we? Emotions in Bordeaux can be such volatile friends. Chase laughed into his coffee. Yeah, let's chalk it up to passion. You know me judge big gestures. Retired, I said, sitting. He smirked. Right, but habits die hard, huh? The waiter came, took orders, cappuccinos, a plate of toast I didn't ask for, 2 mimosas I didn't want. Civility, it seemed, was part of the bill. Chase leaned forward, elbows on the marble. We just want to revisit the idea, Sam. Family office structure keeps assets in-house. You retain symbolic oversight. We handle execution. It's all upside. Lenore patted her bag again, the Dior logo catching the sunlight like a wink. Legacy is romantic, dear. Leverage is reality. Let the young handle the math. Lily's hand found my knee under the table, a silent plea, trembling just enough to make me wish I didn't notice. Just hear him, she whispered. I nodded once. All right, let's hear. Chase smiled like he'd won before the round began. He reached into his briefcase, no portfolio, slick and branded, and slid a glossy folder across the table. The logo stamped on the corner belonged to a firm I knew well. Flashy term sheets, hollow guarantees. I'd seen them crumble on the stand. Just 1 page, he said. Your signature makes it official. The lilies smelled too clean, like perfume trying to erase something sour. I flipped open the folder and began to read, my voice level but loud enough to slice through their curated playlist. Irrevocable transfer of controlling interest. I stopped, looked up. Lenore smiled like I'd just read a poem. See? Just housekeeping language. I closed the folder. No. Oh. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that rewrites rooms. Chase laughed. Too loud for a place that prized restraint. You can't be serious, Sam. We're talking liquidity, not morality. Then you don't need me, I said. Lily's eyes darted between us, panic blooming. Dad, please just think. It's security. For whom? No one answered. I set the folder down, slid it back across the table until it bumped against Chase's macchiato cup, sloshing a single brown line onto the contract's corner. The stain spread like truth. Lenore reached for her napkin, but I was faster. I pulled out my iPhone, lined up the page, and clicked a photo. The sound was small, soft, but it landed heavy. Documentation, I said simply. Chase stiffened. You really don't trust your own family? I trust evidence, I said. It doesn't edit itself. The waiter appeared with the check before anyone asked. Good timing. Survival instinct. Lily looked like she wanted to disappear. Chase leaned back, face tight. Lenore adjusted her earrings, studying me the way one might study a locked vault. I left enough cash on the table for my coffee and stood. The young can handle the math, I said. Just make sure they can also handle the consequences. The camera's click was softer than a gavel, but it weighed the same. It started with a ping, that soft, cheerful blip Facebook uses to deliver small-scale chaos. I opened my phone expecting a weather alert or maybe a photo from Lily. Instead, it was a post from our neighborhood watch group. Reminder to be respectful to elders, it read. No names, just a blurry photo taken outside a restaurant 2 blocks over. The caption, some people forget who paid for the roads they walk on. The photo was bad, grainy, slightly tilted, but I knew that profile. Chase, laughing too hard, gesturing like the world was his audience. The comments came fast. Marianne P. Wasn't that guy at the country club kerfuffle? Tom R. Heard him call his Phil old man. Who does that? Linda M. I saw him at brunch last week. Loud. Really loud. Then someone uploaded a Ring doorbell clip. The timestamp was clear. 7:43 p.m., Friday night. Chase on his phone standing at the curb in front of someone's townhouse. The audio wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. He'll fold. He's sentimental, Chase said, pacing, hands in his pockets. If the judge pulls rank, I'll bury him in PR. The word judge hit like a gavel. The comments multiplied. People speculating, defending, piling on. Someone joked about Park Avenue PR guys with tempers. Someone else wrote, so that's who yelled at the waiter last week. I didn't comment. He scrolled. Slowly. The moderator, a retired nurse named Pam, posted a reminder. Folks, keep it civil. Facts only. No personal attacks. I messaged her privately. Me. Good note. Facts matter. Keep screenshots. Pam. Dawn. It was the kind of exchange that restored my faith in small systems, the quiet, local ones that still worked. I saved the ring clip to a secure folder. Legal, admissible, public space. Then I printed 2 screenshots, the timestamp and transcript visible. Evidence doesn't shout, it sits and waits. For a moment, I just sat on the stair landing, phone still warm in my hand. The banister beside me was smooth. Eleanor used to oil it every spring. Wood remembers care, she'd said once. I rubbed a thumb along it now, and it did feel alive, in its own quiet way. Downstairs, the house hummed refrigerator, radiator, the pulse of a home that still held its ground. My mouth tasted of burnt coffee, memory more than drink the kind they served in courtrooms, bitter but reliable. I missed that taste sometimes, the simplicity of rules written down and followed. The irony of watching Facebook play referee wasn't lost on me. I reread Chase's line, bury him in PR. He thought this was a story he could spin. That image management would save him from math, law, and gravity. He didn't know who was listening. The thread kept growing, speculation turning to gossip, gossip to outrage. It was tempting to watch him burn in pixels. But mobs, even righteous ones, have poor aim. I typed one comment, short, measured. Samuel W. Facts over feelings. Let's not guess until we know. Then I logged out. Some fires go out if you stop feeding them. Others need a proper line to keep them from crossing into the good timber. I opened my laptop, saved one more copy of the file, and labeled the folder simply, Public Record. If PR was his plan, he'd get his wish, just not the kind he wanted. The Northwood Country Club never did anything halfway. Even the valet smiled like it was a profession that required auditions. Inside, the air smelled of money scrubbed clean white hydrangeas, citrus polish, and faint champagne. The string quartet played something cheerful but thin, like joy stretched over formality. I arrived alone, on time. That was my first mistake. Punctuality lets people frame you as an audience. Chase was in his element. Tuxedo crisp, hair slicked back, Rolex glinting beneath the chandelier light. His smile was built for cameras, his voice calibrated for applause. Lenore floated nearby, a Dior clutch tucked under her arm, the social architect of the evening. Every conversation orbited her approval. The walls shimmered with curated warmth photos of Lily and Chase, projected in slow rotation, beach, brunch, ring. My daughter glowed on screen, the way good lighting makes even hesitation look like happiness. When the toasts began, Chase took center stage with his glass raised high. "To family," he called out, the crowd echoing him. "To vision," another wave of laughter. Then he grinned. "And to bold new chapters because the past was just a draft." Polite applause, the kind that forgives arrogance if it sounds confident enough. Lenore's hand found Lily's shoulder, gentle but directive. She guided her forward toward the microphone. Lily hesitated, glancing back once at me, I thought. Maybe at the exit. The feedback squealed. She flinched, steadied herself. "Dad," she began, her voice already trembling around the word. I mean Chase and I, we'd love if you'd," she swallowed, "if you'd contribute the house to our family trust, so we can grow together." The room murmured, softly at first, then louder as realization bloomed. Someone clapped one of Chase's cousins, prematurely proud. My throat tightened, not from surprise, but from recognition. I'd seen that look on her before, the one she wore as a child when cornered into reciting lines she didn't believe. Chase stepped beside her, smiling like a campaign ad. "Don't worry, folks," he said, his hand tightening on her back. "Our judge is retired, but he knows a good deal when he sees one." Laughter followed, warm, thoughtless, like bubbles rising from rot. I didn't move, didn't blink. The hydrangeas beside me swayed slightly as a server past a petal fell, sticking to someone's patent leather shoe. Lily's hand shook as she lowered the mic. The thread on her cuff hung loose, trembling with her. One tug and the seam would unravel. Lenore leaned in from the side, whispering something into her ear that made her shoulders stiffen. I lifted my glass not to toast, not to agree, just to keep my hand from trembling. The red caught the light like a warning. I raised it once, then set it down. No one noticed the folded letter in my inside pocket, the one from my attorney, crisp and clean. A declaratory statement. Donor intent educational scholarships, not speculative ventures. 1 page. Signed. Dated. I'd brought it as insurance. Now it felt like prophecy. As the applause sputtered, I caught the DJ's eye across the room, a young man fidgeting with cables. I made a small gesture, just a nod, a promise that later I'd need the microphone. Lily avoided my gaze. Chase kissed her temple like he'd won something. The crowd smiled the way crowds do, comfortable with victory they didn't have to question. The cameras flashed. I smiled for one of them, and felt the room misread me on purpose. I guess 99% of you will hear this. Sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second. What time is it for you? And where are you listening? There's a point in every case, family or federal, where you stop reacting and start writing. The air at my kitchen table still carried the ghost of the engagement party. Perfume, microphones, and applause that wasn't for me. But I'd had enough of emotion. Emotion doesn't hold up in court. Paper does. By Monday morning, I was in Midtown. Mendez's office sat on the 22nd floor, overlooking a city that hummed with urgency. The glass walls reflected sirens threading the avenue below. I could see my own reflection between them, calmer than I expected. Mendez slid a folder across the table. "We'll circulate a donor intent letter to every institution tied to your name," she said. "Scholarships only. No speculative ventures. No family offices. No conversion of donor assets into private use." Her tone was professional, but beneath it was respect. I'd earned that the hard way, not by titles, but by memory. She tapped another page with her pen. "This one reaffirms the in terrorem clause. Contest it and the heir forfeits. Clean, standard, boring, my favorite kind." I uncapped my Mont Blanc, the nib whispering against the paper. The sound was almost a match strike, small, intentional, permanent. "Send them today," I said. She nodded. Already cued. Midtown Courier by 4. Next stop, Bank of America, the same branch I'd opened my first account in the week Eleanor and I married. The manager, a woman with sharp eyes and a patient smile, greeted me by name. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, shaking my hand, "we've reviewed your notice about lien attempts. We'll flag any movement on estate, linked assets. You get a call first, every time." "Appreciated," I said. "Retired judge or not," she smiled, printing the agreement. "We like the paperwork clean." The one-page alert slipped into a blue folder. My world was turning back into lines and logic. It felt like coming home. On the subway ride back downtown, the air was thick with the smell of dust and old rubber. A violin busker stood near the center pole, playing something halfway between Bach and a memory. Halfway through, he hit a wrong note. Smiled, kept playing. The sound wavered but didn't collapse. Imperfect. Human. Eleanor would have liked that. "Order," she used to say, "is mercy with good penmanship." When I got home, I opened my laptop and began filing. Folders labeled engagement party, ring clips, term sheet photo, each one neat, each timestamp visible. Documentation isn't revenge. It's a mirror that doesn't lie. I composed 3 emails before sunset. To Mendez, confirming document circulation. To the bank, attaching digital verification of the alert system. To Pam, the neighborhood watch moderator. "Facts only, please. No pile-ons." She replied with a heart emoji. Sometimes good governance needs small kindnesses. As the light faded, I took one last step. I opened my calendar app and typed a new entry, Northwood Galamik. The word sat there like a quiet lion, waiting. By night, the house felt like a courtroom after the verdict, silent not because nothing happened, but because the right things did. I poured a glass of water, not whiskey, and looked at the framed photo of Lily on the piano. Her smile used to make rooms brighter. Now it just reminded me of how much light people waste trying to impress the wrong crowd. Chase wanted leverage. But paper walls, properly built, don't fall to noise. And with the records tidy and the money fenced, I knew the next move wasn't mine. It was his. The second lever was sunlight quiet, procedural, disinfecting. Not the kind that blinds, but the kind that reveals dust where people swore it was clean. Northwood Country Club's compliance chair met me in a conference room that smelled faintly of lemon polish and polite dread. The carpet was too soft, The trophies too shiny, the silence too curated. He was a former CPA, silver hair cropped to regulation precision. Judge Whitaker, he said, flipping through a folder with slow, surgical care. We've had some unpaid vendor notes tied to Davenport events. Florists, staging crews, a catering subcontractor out of Queens. Small, but sticky. The accounts department flagged inconsistencies. He hesitated, studying my expression like a man checking for bias in a mirror. If there are more, he continued, we freeze booking privileges pending review, routine policy. I understand, I said evenly. I'm not asking for anything, only that the club hold everyone to the same standards. He nodded once. The room exhaled. There was no gavel, no verdict, just paper moving the way gravity prefers. That afternoon, I took my usual walk home down Madison, bought a Pike Place from Starbucks, and sat at my kitchen counter under the weak autumn light that New York calls October. The brownstone radiator ticked behind me, pretending to fight a winter that hadn't arrived. Eleanor used to say this city's best lies were seasonal. She was right. I opened my laptop. 3 tabs, 3 links, nothing more. A state UCC filing, liens and credit pledges under the Davenport Holdings name. Property records showing recent refinancing aggressive interest, short term. A docket from a civil dispute I'd once recused myself from a matter of unpaid invoices and lost deposits. All public, all dull, if you didn't know what to look for. I drafted an email to a local business reporter I respected, a woman who'd covered zoning scandals without adjectives. Subject line, for your information public filings, nothing confidential. The body contained 3 links, no commentary. Her reply came 20 minutes later. Subject, for your information public filings. Body, appreciate the leads, quiet but relevant. Hearing chatter about an engagement party budget dispute? Confirm? I didn't reply. I archived the email. Influence isn't a hammer. It's a promise not to swing one where a fingernail can lift the corner of a sticker. By evening, I'd added one more note to my running file. Call Neighborhood Watch recontractor complaints. Pam answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. Hi, Judge. You seeing these posts about unlicensed remodelers? I am, I said. Worth reminding folks to verify business filings. Keeps things clean. Always, she said. We'll post a reminder tonight. The radiator clicked again. Dry air, warm metal, familiar music. I leaned back in my chair, the city moving outside my window like a film I'd seen before but still enjoyed. The plan wasn't vengeance, it was oxygen. You don't suffocate corruption, you ventilate it. I sent one last email to Mendez before shutting down my laptop. Subject, updates, body. No public statements. All documents only. I poured a small glass of water, not wine, and stared at the faint outline of hydrangea petals still pressed in the engagement invitation pinned on my fridge. Sometimes all you need is a window latch. The weather does the rest. The next morning would tell me where the first shadow would fall, home or club. The Scottsdale brunch looked like a lifestyle magazine come to life, white stone patio, a pool that reflected blue so vivid it felt digitally corrected, and the steady hiss of water misters fighting the desert heat. The saguaro cacti stood like props, arranged by someone who thought nature should pose. Lenore Davenport was in her element. Sun hat wide, sunglasses larger, bracelets chiming like ice cubes in a well-poured martini. The kind of woman who believed elegance excused arithmetic. I wasn't there, of course. But sound travels strangely in the desert. The recording began with laughter, bright, brittle, expensive. Then Lenore's voice, lower, familiar in that way contempt always is. He's sentimental, she said. We'll flip the Park Slope relic and get Chase proper capital. A pause. Someone, a cousin maybe, snorted. You can't peel a judge. Retired, Lenore replied. And ripe. Laughter again. The audio was tinny, wind brushing the mic, but every word landed. The file arrived that evening, unannounced, through a nurse Eleanor once mentored years ago. A brief message accompanied it. Sam, this came across my mom's phone, do what you need. I played the clip twice. Not to feel it feeling was redundant, but to mark the timestamps. 2:11, 2:24, 2:31. Intent always lives between breaths. I didn't forward it to the press. Not my style. I sent it to Mendez. Her reply came fast. Got it. Authenticates pattern of intent. No leaks. We route internally. That phrase pattern of intent was the quiet drumbeat of every fraud case I'd ever presided over. People rarely sin out of genius. They sin out of habit. Still, I printed the transcript. Old habits die hard. The words on the page read worse than they sounded. Typewritten malice has no perfume, just ink and fact. On the margin, Mendez had written in neat block handwriting, authenticates pattern of intent. She'd underlined it twice. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Eleanor and I used to debate seasoning like case law. I pulled open the drawer and found her old recipe card for pot roast on paper soft from use, her handwriting curved and certain. I held it for a moment, tracing the ink grooves with my thumb. Her instructions ended with, let it rest before serving. It's always better when it's settled. I slid the card back without a smudge. The air in the brownstone was still, the radiator ticking like a metronome for restraint. I drafted one last email for the evening, no embellishment, no commentary. 2. Northwood Compliance. Subject, for your records. Attachment. Scottsdale audio transcript, PDF. No accusations, just a document where a smile used to be. When the printer cooled, I sat in the half-light, phone face down, knowing the next step would come with echoes. Eleanor would have hated all this. She believed in redemption, even for the careless. But she also believed in paper trails. If truth were water, she used to say, some people would only recognize it when it ruined their shoes. I looked at the transcript again, the laughter, the timing, the line about being ripe. Convenience, not cruelty. That was their flavor of evil. Convenience doesn't gloat, it just assumes it's right. I folded the transcript, placed it in a manila envelope, and wrote one word on the tab, Scottsdale. Tomorrow, light would meet microphone and chandelier. The Northwood Gala shimmered like denial under chandeliers. Hydrangeas everywhere, white, overwatered, pretending permanence. A string quartet sighed through something cheerful, too polite to notice tension humming under the silverware. The salmon was the color of courtesy. For the Davenports, this was supposed to be a victory lap. New alliances, old money. The final step before family office became more than cocktail chatter. I was the legacy donor, the ceremonial elder expected to nod, smile, and vanish into relevance past tense. They seated me 3 tables from the stage, facing the podium. Eleanor always said I positioned myself like a judge even off the bench. She wasn't wrong. I liked to see the exits. The MC, a man with too much charm and too little sense, tapped the microphone. And now, he said, a few words from a man who's been part of Northwood's family since before most of us could spell fiduciary. Judge Whitaker, retired, has supported our pediatric initiative for decades. Applause. Polite. Obligatory. Chase clapped too, that overconfident rhythm of someone applauding himself. Lenore adjusted her pearls like they were armor. Lily wouldn't look at me. I stood, Omega ticking steady, the leather of the podium cool under my palm. Good evening, I began. I'm here to speak about children and trust. The room smiled. They thought they knew the genre. I've spent a life believing trust is built, not traded. My late wife and I established an endowment for education scholarships, not speculation. A murmur, the sound of social oxygen thinning. I continued, voice even. In recent months, I've been reminded that trust, like any asset, attracts management advice. So, for transparency, I'll read directly from our donor intent letter. 3 sentences, no adjectives, pure law. Then I gestured toward the screens flanking the ballroom. 2 clips played in sequence, without title cards or commentary. First, Chase on a curb, night lit by a ring camera, saying, "He'll fold. He's sentimental." Then Lenore in Scottsdale, shaded under a straw hat, her bracelets chiming, retired and ripe. The laughter on the audio froze into the real air of the gala gasps. Forks set down, someone's nervous chuckle dying mid-breath. I waited for silence, then lifted a single page. This is the clause my wife and I wrote together, I said. Any attempt to redirect our funds voids participation and triggers the no contest provision. This is not a threat. It is a promise we wrote down. The microphone caught every syllable. Chase stood halfway, red creeping up his collar. You can't. The MC's hand found his elbow. Let's take a moment, folks. But the crowd wasn't waiting for permission. They were watching, calculating, remembering every time they'd called something harmless fun that wasn't. I placed an envelope on the podium, plain white, official seal visible, scholarship, endowment activation immediate, signed and time-stamped. Behind me, the quartet had stopped mid-phrase. The silence that followed was more orchestral than anything they'd played all night. A pedal dropped from one of the centerpieces, landing on polished silver. Soft, final. Eleanor would have grinned at the timing. I set the microphone down like a hot tool and stepped away, leaving the room to its mirrors. In my peripheral vision, I saw Lenore's smile calcify, Chase's posture deflate, and Lily's hands trembling under the tablecloth. Mercy, Eleanor once said, means knowing when not to edit the truth. I walked toward the exit as applause tentative, then growing followed me like a verdict that everyone already knew. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. It simply reads. The next 48 hours weren't loud. They were official, the kind of quiet that only institutions can make, where every silence comes printed on letterhead. At 8:12 a.m. Monday, Northwood's board released a statement on their website. Simple serif font, no adjectives. Pending review of member conduct, all bookings related to Davenport events are paused. No one mentioned my name. They didn't have to. By noon, the Hospital Foundation followed suit, quoting a line that might as well have been scripture. We honor donor intent and have no comment on private family matters. In that world, no comment means everything. It means they've picked a side without saying it. That afternoon, a boutique event vendor, the same one that handled Lenore's Scottsdale brunch, posted something sharper. We do not service clients who disparage elders or first responders. That wasn't written by a lawyer. That was written by someone's daughter. The reporter's piece went live that night. I'd expected fire. What I got was precision 3 links to public records, 2 sentences about the no contest clause, 1 note about the gala statement. No adjectives, no quotes, just truth with timestamps. By Tuesday morning, the Davenport brand began to leak polish. The people who built their shine, contractors, planners, the kind who smile for invoices and stay silent for connections, began to opt out. Lenore tried a statement about misunderstandings and family complexities. It read like tissue paper in rain. I didn't smile when I read it. Relief doesn't need teeth. Lily stayed quiet. No texts, no calls, no explanations disguised as apologies. Her name wasn't mentioned anywhere, and I made sure it stayed that way. There are casualties you don't allow. The radiator in the brownstone rattled again, the city's little drumbeat of persistence. I poured coffee, folded the morning's Wall Street Journal, and stared at the ink until the words blurred. Headlines about inflation, mergers, and a sidebar on philanthropy audits. I read anyway, because habit is a kind of dignity. In my inbox, the emails stacked like verdicts. From Northwood Admin, membership status under review. From Midtown Press, clarification request declined. From an old colleague, glad someone still believes paperwork matters. Then one stood out. Subject line, request to meet regarding reputational remediation. Chase's firm. I starred it. Left it closed. There's an art to restraint. Leadership isn't about winning the mob, it's about refusing to become one. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I hadn't seen in years. Proud of you, it read. You stayed a judge. I didn't know if it was the former clerk I'd mentored, or one of the defense attorneys who used to argue until closing time. It didn't matter. The words landed where they were meant to. That evening, I took a walk past the courthouse. The building's limestone facade looked the same as it did when I left, stubborn, impassive, built for memory more than mercy. The sky turned the color of stainless steel. I watched office lights flicker on one floor at a time, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to balance. When a web pulls back, you don't need to push. Gravity teaches its own lesson. I headed home through the slow hum of traffic, carrying no anger, just the faint weight of consequence settling where it belonged. Tomorrow I'd have to think about Lily, her job, her heart, her choice. But not tonight. Tonight, the city had already rendered its verdict. She came just before sunset, the city already turning that strange, bruised color between gold and gray. No makeup, no armor, Just a woman who used to be my little girl, holding a yellow legal pad, and a look that could only be described as sober. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. No ceremony. The brownstone smelled faintly of rosemary and dust, the scent of dinners that once had more laughter than rules. She stood in the middle of the living room, the one Eleanor decorated in soft blues, and looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the light, or maybe it was the weight. She held up the pad. "I made 3 columns," she said quietly. "Where I failed you, where I failed myself, what I'll do next." I didn't ask to see it. The fact that she'd written it was enough. Saturday. The couch dipped unevenly, just as it used to when she'd curl up next to her mother to watch those courtroom dramas and whisper, "He's just like you, Dad." But there was no nostalgia tonight. Just a ring mark on the side table where someone had once forgotten a coaster, a small imperfection. Eleanor never buffed out because she said a home needs proof of use. Lily's voice cracked, low and dry. "I wanted a quiet life more than a good one. I stood on a stage and asked you to disrespect yourself. No tears, no dramatics. That hurt more than any outburst could have." I nodded. "You did." She looked at the carpet, tracing its pattern with her thumb as if searching for a verdict. "Tell me what the boundary looks like if I'm allowed to try." For a moment I thought about Eleanor's last note to me, the one she'd tucked inside her recipe book. Mercy is not weakness. It's structure that holds love steady. So I stood, walked to my desk, and took out a single sheet of paper, the donor intent copy, the clause that had saved everything. I handed it to her. "You will not touch legacy," I said. "You will not translate love into leverage. You will apologize publicly, not performatively. And then you will act differently for a very long time." She nodded once. No argument, just absorption. I saw her then, not the woman at the gala, trembling behind a microphone, but the 8-year-old in the blue recital dress, straightening her ribbon and whispering, "Am I enough?" I hadn't answered then, but I did now, in the only way that mattered, by setting terms that kept her safe. She extended her hand. I took it. A handshake, not an embrace. A promise to attempt. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "I'm returning the ring to Chase." "That's your act to own," I said. "Don't do it for me. Do it because you need the weight off your hand." The silence after that wasn't heavy. It was precise, like both of us had finally learned how to breathe the same air again. Before she left, she hesitated at the door. "Dad," she said, "there's a pediatric scholarship night next month. I'd like to speak. Not to explain. To serve." I studied her face, the new honesty there, the absence of performance, and nodded. "Then speak." She managed a small smile, half-formed, but real. I watched her walk down the steps, her shadow stretching long across the street, fading into the amber light. I told her yes, not because she'd earned it, but because the earning starts somewhere. The pediatric scholarship night wasn't grand, it was decent. Honest. A cafeteria-turned-hall at NYC HealthPlus hospitals, the kind that smelled faintly of hand sanitizer and coffee that had been reheated too many times. The podium bore a scratch across the front, carnations drooped politely at the edges, and the crockpots along the fold-up tables hummed like old friends keeping vigil. It was the kind of place Eleanor loved, humble, purposeful, built for usefulness over spectacle. Lily stood near the podium, fingers brushing the paper in her hands. She looked unvarnished. No camera-ready glow, no defensive tilt of the chin, just my daughter in a blue cardigan breathing through her nerves, waiting for the MC to nod. He did. She walked to the mic. The feedback squealed briefly, then settled. Lily adjusted it with both hands, the way someone might steady a heavy truth. "I wanted comfort more than character," she began. Her voice wasn't theatrical. It was working through something. And when I was offered an easier road, I took it. I asked a good man to sign away what was never his to give. I wanted a life where money insulated me from mistakes. She paused. I forgot that good lives are earned by showing up, not cashing out. The room held its breath. No villain names, no excuses, just the kind of apology that comes when a person has finally run out of performance. She looked toward the nurses seated in the front row, their scrubs still faintly creased from late shifts. "I'm sorry," she said, "to our nurses, our parents, our patients for trying to convert care into capital. for forgetting that trust is not a loan to be leveraged. She took a small step back from the mic. I'll earn my place here by doing the work, not by saying this out loud. The applause wasn't thunderous. It wasn't meant to be. It came soft and steady like rain on pavement after a long drought. I watched her bow her head slightly, then return to her seat, her back straight, her eyes clear. She looked both smaller and larger at once. When the MC gestured for me, I walked to the podium. My hands brushed the wood, worn smooth from years of hands before mine. I could feel the faint tick of my father's old Omega through it, his pulse layered inside time itself. I didn't have a speech prepared, just a page Eleanor's handwriting, the ink slightly faded. This was written by my late wife, I said. She left it for future scholarship recipients. I think it belongs to all of us tonight. I unfolded it, the paper soft from age. Do something boring and good every day. The world runs on boring and good. That line earned a low laugh from the back row, the kind that comes when truth hits gently but deep. We handed out envelopes afterward. Students, volunteers, a nurse who cried quietly when her name was called. People filed by afterward to shake my hand, to thank Lily, to say things like, "That was brave," or "That was needed." Simple words, more binding than any press release. The crowd thinned. The hall's lights dimmed in halves. I turned off the mic and stacked the leftover programs in a neat pile. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. Chase. We need to talk. Everything is burning. I looked at the screen, then silenced it. Outside, the city breathed cold on our faces, and for the first time in weeks I wasn't bracing. I guess 99% of you will hear this, sigh and scroll past, not clicking like or subscribe. Even if it only takes a second, what time is it for you, and where are you listening? The aftershocks weren't loud. They came as emails, not headlines. Northwood's board issued a quiet censure. Member privileges limited pending completion of obligations. It read like policy because it was. The kind of sentence designed to make consequence look administrative. Vendors followed. A florist, a caterer, a print shop all received reconciled invoices from Davenport Holdings. No apologies attached, just cleared balances. The kind of gesture people mistake for closure. The reporter wrote a 2-paragraph follow-up. No adjectives, no tone. Sources confirm completion of payments and censure of involved parties. The Whitaker Endowment remains active under hospital oversight. Then she moved on to a city zoning scandal, exactly as it should be. A week later, Chase requested a meeting. Mendez suggested daylight, public space, visible exits. We chose a midtown office, glass walls, skyline views, sterile enough to keep emotion short. He was already seated when I arrived, smaller in a chair, built to make men look big. His suit didn't quite fit anymore. Success had always been a costume for him, and now it was a size too large. I overreacted, he began. His voice cracked around the word over. Things got public. We can fix perceptions. He looked at my hands, maybe expecting forgiveness to be written there like an old signature. What do you want? He asked. I opened my folder and slid a photocopy across the desk. Northwood's conduct policy. A list of vendors still owed partial fees, and one short draft statement. Settle your obligations. Publish this correction in your company's newsletter. That you respect elders, public servants, and donor intent. Then go be decent. For a decade. He blinked. A decade? That's the price of a fast lie, I said. His jaw tightened. You don't get to judge me. Correct, I replied, standing. I retired. He didn't call after me. The kind of silence that follows truth has its own dignity. Outside, the street was a rush of horns and sirens, the city's orchestra of indifference. I walked 3 blocks before I stopped thinking about him at all. On the sidewalk, I thought of Eleanor's pot roast card again, her tidy handwriting curling around the margin. Do something boring and good every day. I smiled. She'd been right about almost everything. At home, I stuck 2 things on the refrigerator door with the same magnet, the family rule sheet and the scholarship night flyer. Beneath them, Lily had added a small sticky note. Wednesday nursing shift, late. A few minutes later, the front door clicked open. She stepped in with a plastic bag and a tired grin. Leftover ziti, she said, from the cafeteria. Not fancy, but edible. We ate it standing at the counter. No speeches, no backward glances. Just the sound of forks on plates and the radiator lying about the weather again, its old trick. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "See you Sunday." The kind of phrase that once felt routine now felt sacred. I rinsed the dishes, wiped the counter, and checked my phone one last time. My lock screen glowed. A photo from the scholarship night, a little boy holding a new library card up like a passport. Grin wide enough to make you forget the noise of everything else. I turned off the lights. The brownstone settled around me like a verdict well served. Tomorrow the coffee will taste like coffee. The radiator will lie about the weather, and the door will lock from the inside the way respect always has. By choice.